Alright, so I'm here to answer whether a banner like this is even worth your consideration at all, considering what we have coming up pretty soon, and whether your orbs are better saved for that. 4 of these 8 characters. So, let's find out. Is this banner worth it? Is Caeda any good? And is she worth, or is this banner worth your orbs? Let's find out.
Let the lesson begin.
What's up guys, Akariss here, bringing another Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is the Legendary Caeda analysis. Should you pull? Comparisons, whatever. A bunch of information to hopefully help you decide how powerful Legendary Caeda is and how she matches up to today's metagame. I'm going to cover some builds that I feel are best used for her. I'm going to cover her pros and cons, of course. Going to also showcase what you guys have displayed for me through the community on the YouTube community tab, and of course through my Discord. And I will also rank her, an initial ranking at least, on how I feel her compared to the other water legendaries. So all that to be covered in this video, and as always, I do hope you enjoy it, and that this video is out before the banner drops is a little bit of a blessing. Hopefully it helps you come to a more informed decision. Of course, the biggest one to even consider before I even talk about Caeda or the banner or anything else is be reminded that a Hero Rises will likely be happening in a few weeks, featuring 4 of the 8 of these characters here. We don't know as of the time of this video, but it doesn't really matter because it is pretty much almost all of these characters are in some way or another going to likely be a lot more valuable, or at least easier to obtain, than a big portion of this banner. So yeah. Alright guys, so the first thing I'll always ask before we jump into the meat of this video is to smash the like button and sub if you haven't already. The likes do show a lot for me in data to know whether these videos matter to you and whether I should keep producing them. There have been, of course, quite a lot of you guys doing that, and I see it and I appreciate it, and that's why I continue to do these specific videos that get a lot of attention, so that I put in the effort and you guys get the information you need. Simple as that, really. If you enjoy the content, or you love me, or any case like that, which of course I love you too, maybe consider the Patreon in the description below, the YouTube join member, or hit me up on Twitch and you can also join me there. You get access to, of course, the end screen where you get credited. You can join my private Discord, get some immediate help, and of course some other goodies, including a hero review coming up soon. If any of that is of interest, you just want to support me, then it means a lot. And with that, I'm going to jump into this video and we're going to talk about Caeda. So first of all, I did cover Legendary Caeda and my initial impressions plus the banner in yesterday's impressions video, or might have been the day before. Getting old here. So feel free to check that out before this video or after it, just to give yourself a more rounder picture. But of course I will talk about it here before we jump into the Caeda analysis, her rankings, and of course your thoughts as a community. So first of all, Caeda is the first of many, and usually the first of many isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it is, like Legendary Chrom and Legendary Claude are still very good, and you'll actually see that throughout the video. But what I mean by the first of many is that she is increasing the score boundaries. She is the highest scoring Legendary in the game as of this release, because they're going to increase the score thresholds for her specifically, and she's also going to provide a speed and pair-up blessing, which is an addition and to like the current pair-up legendaries. This is quite impactful, I'd say. So there are a couple of reasons that definitely define her, but don't think that these are the reasons to be pulling for her, because of course we will get further legendaries in the near future, and actually as soon as next month, the newer ones which will come with these effects as well, which are blessings, stats, and of course, just breaking new score ceilings and boundaries. So Caeda is not going to be unique in this aspect for very long, and that shouldn't necessarily determine whether you pull for her. Whether you like the character, or if she adds some sort of component to your strategy, could be a decent reason. And of course, the builds analysis I do on here might sway you one way or another, so I'll try to do that throughout this video. Now for the banner itself, and whether there's something here that's worth it for you, I do think that blue has good coverage in terms of different roles. Note is still the best defense mythic in my opinion overall, so if you don't have her yet, then that is pretty good as a pickup when she's sharing with Caeda. and Faye here. Faye covers Earth Season, and Caeda covers Water Season. Note is the best defense mythic. This makes blue pretty good in terms of picking up anything there. However, Faye isn't the greatest in Earth Season. I didn't rank her pretty well, and I still stand by that. She's not really in the perfect season. She does score well, though. And Caeda is, well, you'll see throughout the video, but she's not necessarily like a, oh my god, kind of game-breaking type of thing. Now, the other colors are just going to be more determined on your account and your goal specifically. So, again, if you need, let's say, Corrin merges, then Corrin and Lake Leaf, like Corrin, Leaf, and Ascended Leg Yarn might be a good color for you. Green, in terms of Triandra, Edelgard, and Astrid. Again, decent fodder, maybe merges on Edelgard, or you don't have Triandra. These are all possible reasons. The only one that kind of looks like a dud here is probably Regan, Malice, and Sothis, where Sothis is probably one of the worst defense mythics. Malice is whatever, forgotten at this point. Regan is great, but unfortunately she cannot carry that color. Either way, you should be able to determine what is most important to you here, and maybe consider that worth your orbs or not. With Hero Rises coming up, though, I think that most people will be skipping, and of course we will see that in some of the data later in this video. So yeah, let's talk more specifically about Caeda and my analysis on what I think here. So what I want to start off by mentioning is her compared to other Lance Fliers. This is actually an interesting topic because Lance Fliers are a little bit of a meme when it comes to role coverage. Like, realistically, most of them just flat out suck. Like, to put it simply, like, Lance Fliers have never really had like a dominant unit. They are pretty good at fulfilling certain roles. Some of them can be pretty good, such as S, like just acting as a complete like anti-armor, anti-fallen Edelgard counter, for example. Some of them can get lots of stats or have decent preference weapons in the right case, such as Aranis or Farina, but those are all situations that a player would make use of. Seteth could be a good support, but realistically, there just isn't that many good Lance Fliers in the game. If anything, you pretty much were pretty open to who you could invest in a blue Lance Flyer. But the beauty of Caeda here is she's probably just going to be the dominant blue Lance Flyer in this game right now. She's going to likely just be number one, just because she can fulfill a lot of roles that these other Lance Flyers can do, due to the uniqueness of her weapon, both as a player phase and enemy phase type flyer. So those of you guys that wanted a Lance Flyer in some capacity, well, Caeda is here to deliver on that front. So let's talk about Caeda, her weapon, and some builds to get into this. So you'll see the pros and cons under me, her weapon, her preference B skill, and some initial builds for you to look at, plus her stats and fodder. We're going to touch all these right now. First up, I'm just going to talk about a little bit about her pros and cons now that I've done a little bit of analysis on her. So she is the highest scoring legendary at this time, which of course makes her stand out compared to others. This is temporary though, and it won't age well, so make sure that isn't strictly the reason you pull. She's easy to use and build. As you'll see in a lot of the builds that I feature throughout this video, she's really kind of like a pick up and play type of character. I feel she's built and ready to go right out of the box. There's only minor adjustments you might make depending on the strategy you want to run, but generally speaking, she's actually pretty much ready to go right as soon as you get her. She is likely to make the biggest impact in Summoner Duels, if I was to be honest. In terms of like arena and AR offense, AR defense and such, the best place for her will likely be Summoner Duels, as she likely can just checkmate a lot of teams that aren't ready to deal with her or have the wrong compositions. Now in Summoner Duels S, this will be less of a problem because you can just ban the Caeda team, but in SDR, you might have to actually consider how to play into Caeda because she can of course set up her Vantage, and that could just literally wipe your team away. So it is, I feel, her best place will actually be Summoner Duels, despite her being designed as an arena unit, but we'll talk into this further in a moment. Now, her cons actually outweigh the pros because there's just a couple of reasons that Caeda just isn't really that appealing. First of all, Vantage strategies just aren't really meta right now. You have to kind of force it. They are nice anti-meta strats, meaning like teams that can't properly protect their healing towers or don't have healing towers or just don't run Hardy Bearing in the current game or Hardy Bearing weapons make her great as an anti-meta pick or Vantage strats in general. They are a strong strategy and they can be used, but Caeda isn't just a pick up and play type of Vantage carry. I think she could act as that, and maybe force more defenses to adapt to that strategy. But generally speaking, it's not meta, and a lot of problems with Vantage tend to come down to, do you kill everything in one shot? Because if you don't, you're likely going to die. That's kind of what Vantage is right now, and for a lot of Vantage units. The 2-space condition on the weapon is also a big problem to make full use out of the Vantage. While the Vantage condition itself doesn't have that condition, like she doesn't have to be within 2 spaces for the Vantage itself, the extra stats she gains, the 5 to all stats, and the negating, or rather buffing herself and debuffing foes based on bonuses, has a 2-space condition. This means to use her properly, you likely want to hit, kill something, and then cancel back within 2 spaces of a unit. This is a bit restrictive because you might not want to do this a lot, or you may lean on those stats to get those kills. It's nice to have that Kanto strategy where you can go in, kill something, run out, have your Vantage ready on the enemy phase, and likely have an ally support, but this may not be very practical against high-threat teams that may use dance traps or dancers or rally traps and just get around Caeda and just snipe one of your supports. So that is a bit of a con that I think needs to be addressed. Finally, she's not really supportive in any way. Being a flyer, she could use guidance, ground orders, air orders, etc., but realistically, she has no supportive capabilities, and this is a detriment to her long-term usage. A lot of the best legendaries and mythics in this game, or just characters in general that can be used for a very long period of time, are supportive in nature. Support characters age the best because they don't really care. They're meta resilient to stats, they're meta resilient to matchups, they don't really care. They're there to support other characters, and therefore they will age the best. Something like Caeda unfortunately will not age the best. She'll be really strong on release, she'll be really good, but with no supportive utility, she's likely to fall off a little bit as time goes on. Of course, remixes bring these type of characters back, but it takes a while until that stage is reached. Finally, she's really not that good on defense at all, such as air defense or arena defense. But who cares about arena defense? Actually, it's more of a blessing that arena should become easier should people use a +10 Caeda, because Kanto as a mechanic is not that great on AI hands. Kanto tends to run away as much as possible, or avoid enemy threat ranges, which means it gives the player space to overcome the team. This is a good thing, I'd say, for most players, but if you're trying to use her on defense or something, the Kanto mechanic is likely not going to aid you in any way, so it has to be mostly a con here. So yeah, just to review on the weapons, her weapon is a armor and cav weapon. Her Vantage effect gives her priority on Vantage on armors and cavs and a self-null follow-up, which are all great things. If she does combat, she ends up buffing herself with a Vantage buff, which is great and able to have basically 100% Vantage if used properly. So great weapon, great synergy, great base kit, and her stats are okay. They are, for a Vantage unit, 38 attack is good enough. She's higher than her other forms. Usually Caeda doesn't have the highest attack stat, so in this case she does, and that's at least a decent one, and that's a very good thing. Her weapon is super synergistic. I mean, her kit with Distant Storm giving her extra attack defense, rain helping kill Vantage scenarios, and the weapon giving her plenty of attack and debuffs on foes to really guarantee as much kills as possible whenever she wants to Vantage. Now, if you use her in arena at a high investment, you do have to sub out the rain skill to maximize scoring by using a 300 SP A, B, and C skill. This is a requirement to maximize the amount of scoring she can do in arena. But otherwise, it's pretty plug and play, and she is a good unit, just not going to be game breaking by any means. Not Legendary Cigarette tier by, for sure. Okay, now in terms of other usage, air offense for sure, where I feel she can shine pretty well, and Summoner Duels, of course. You really don't need to reinvent the wheel here. It's very simple to adjust her into a role you need her to do. So with Vantage, you pretty much keep base kit and throw something like attack speed solo into the seal, and you're honestly good to go. It's really as simple as that. She's a very plug and play type character, and it really just shows. Just giving her attack and speed will help her get her player phase kills and position herself with Kanto in a place where she can likely Vantage and kill a bunch of stuff, or at least stop your foes from trying to engage on your team. This works in both air offense and Summoner Duels, and she can definitely threaten some teams or completely checkmate players in Summoner Duels, which I feel is definitely a strength of hers. If you wanted to change around her kit a little bit for using her in AR offense as well that doesn't involve vantaging, you can sub out Faithful Loyalty here for Wings of Mercy and just give her Heavy Blade and Quick Impulse or some other acceleration with some allies, which I'll show in a moment. So this is the more self-sufficient case where she's Quick Impulse, Heavy Blade, but you can definitely pair her up with something like Valoria, Legendary Hector, or Raphael, and all of those work really well. But because she has Kanto and she can Wings of Mercy in, she is going to be really nice as a Gale Force unit and shouldn't have too much issues securing kills. The bigger issue is probably getting her to Gale Force proc, which would require some sort of dance, such as Dual Peony, Marianne, etc. Finally, since her weapon is not distant counter, she can be paired up with Far Save tanks as well, so sub out her A skill on Distant Storm and use her actually in a more tank respective role using Kestrel Stance 3. The reason why I think this works pretty well is because her weapon actually works nicely for this, and her B skill works nicely for this. She has a self-null follow-up. This means she doesn't really care about impact skills. She has a great speed stat, so she's going to get her doubles and her kills pretty reliably. Kestrel Stance 3 gives her a guard effect, which is great for tanking. And finally, her weapon gives her a bunch of stats, 5 to all stats, and of course, debuffs foes if they're using bonuses and gives her even more stats. So she actually can work pretty well as a tank or a tank unit, has some great matchups, and with Far Save protecting her, she doesn't really have to worry about archers either, therefore doesn't necessitate the use of IO'd Shield. All three of these strategies I feel actually fit her pretty well, so she's going to be great in Arena, Air Offense, and Summoner Duels. And if you were considering some great allies for her, there's obviously more to this. Definitely Muspel for the Vantage strats, where she can Kanto after killing something and move back into Muspel's range. This will assure that she kills pretty much everything, because Muspel is really great in Vantage strats to secure as many kills as possible. Some sort of Gale Force acceleration would make it so she doesn't suffer as much, I'd say, so it doesn't have to use Quick Impulse or can have more attack and speed. So Valoria, Raphael, or Legendary Hector, as I mentioned. And finally, just Far Save, make sure you have some sort of color contrast to make the matchups easier. So since she's blue, a green or red Far Save works pretty well, and I figured I'd feature Black Knight with Savvy Fighter here because Black Knight good and Savvy Fighter good. But yeah, that basically covers all these builds and what I think of Caeda. Now, if you wanted to get some more perspective here on where I feel she ranks compared to the other legendaries, water legendaries in the game, then what we have here is my new ranking. So I figured now I would just give Chrom his own tier in water legendaries because he really is that good. After using dual Chrom myself, and actually never having access to Legendary Chrom and Legendary Lucina, I probably underestimated how powerful Change Fate and Future Vision were. To be honest, I did use them in plenty of modes, such as Grand Conquest and Allegiance battles and such, but in competitive modes, I definitely underrated and underappreciated how powerful Change Fate is. It is so good, so flexible, air offense, air defense, Summoner Duels, literally every mode in this game. Change Fate and Future Vision are superbly powerful, and therefore Chrom deserves to be in his own tier. He is just that good. It doesn't even matter too much. It's kind of a nice benefit that Chrom himself is quite a good unit, having armor effectiveness, neutralizing penalties, great builds. It goes on, but the fact is Chrom scores well, is usable in every mode, and he's just really powerful. Dual Chrom is also very good. Legendary Lucina is really good. And Brave Chrom may very well come with another version of Change Fate. I guess we'll find out later in the year. Either way, I definitively think that Chrom is a step above the rest of the water legendaries, and if you wanted to get into water season, Chrom would be the best place to look at. Now, the other legendaries definitely are no slouches in terms of water. Now that Erica has been refined, remixed, I figured I'd put her here. And Azura still hasn't been refined and remixed, so of course we'll talk about that again when that happens, but for the most part, I feel like this would be where my list is. Now, Caeda in terms of arena does score the most, so she does beat everyone else out here, but Byleth's support capability of providing a drive type null follow-up is extremely good, and might be a reason that you might want him from Hero Rises just for that alone. But as an arena unit, he doesn't lack either, as he has great matchups against a lot of meta units, doesn't care about damage reduction, does huge amounts of damage through his nuke, and he's a great color in this season. As you can no doubt see from this list, half of them are blue, and Byleth happens to stand alone in green. This means within his own season, he's pretty much dominating everything. Leaf and Caeda, though, still I think are quite the best when it comes here. Leaf has his own range Gale Force type of ability. He has a brave weapon. He's gonna get a remix soon. He's already really strong and still scores pretty well, even by today's standards. Making up the A tier, we have Azura, Erica, and Ryoma. Now, Azura is still very powerful as a support unit, and that's why she deserves her rank in A. Being able to buff movement, giving a dance, I mean, it doesn't really need much of an explanation. Erica has been buffed to just have true damage and Kanto, and her weapon overall, I believe, also having damage reduction is all really good just to make her far better as a unit. Mobility is king in pretty much every game mode, and that's what makes Erica as good as she is. Now, Ryoma, I feel, is a little bit, like, if anything, he might be closer to a B tier on this list, because he's still very good, and he actually has good matchups against everyone on this list, believe it or not. Like, literally everyone. He can even beat Chrom. But the problem with Ryoma is he is still mostly a combat unit, similar to Caeda here. He can run stuff like guidance, he can run ground orders and such, but at the end of the day, Ryoma can't run anything with mobility. He doesn't have Kanto, he has to rely on stuff like aerobatics, and his combat defines him. Therefore, Ryoma is falling off a little bit, and honestly, Dimitri might be a little bit better than him, but I'm kind of back and forth on that one. Dimitri is probably better in most modes in the game, while Ryoma's better in Arena, so it's fairly close, and if anything, Ryoma's maybe B, Dimitri might be bottom A. That is interchangeable a little bit depending on where and when you use them, or what the rest of your team is. But they're both pretty lacking compared to every other water legendary. Now, Dimitri and Fjorm, unfortunately, are not really flexible at all in the roles they bring. Dimitri is great as a player phase unit. He can run stuff like Gale Force and true damage type nuking stuff, but at the end of the day, he's a melee unit and he's a combat unit. This all ends up being very inflexible in the teams that you can use him in, and strategies are very specific. He's very good at those strategies and definitely one of the best in class for that, but when it comes to long-term viability, that's just not good enough. You need to do more. You need to be able to support the team, and if you have bad matchups or you're just not able to do your specialization in different game modes, that's what makes him so restrictive and not as good as the other legendaries. I'm sorry, Dimitri fans. Every time I do this, there's always someone in the comments like, Dimitri is way better than you give him credit for. Move him up to S with Chrom. And I feel bad every time I do this, but the reality is he's just not that good. And I knew he wasn't good when he got released. He just doesn't do anything that can help the rest of the team succeed other than trying to kill things before they kill him. Because in reality, with like 16 reds, he's gonna die a lot. Despite Fjorm's remix and refine, she's definitely a lot better than before, but I am a plus 10 Fjorm user and I can decisively say she is the worst water legendary, but she at least is still functional. As a tank and with Ice Mirror too, she can win a lot of matchups that she otherwise shouldn't be winning, such as, of course, Legendary Byleth. I have had my Fjorm able to take that one out because of Ice Mirror's damage reduction, not being pierced by Sublime Heaven, and she just ends up killing him back because of the damage absorbed or potentially just of her high res. So she has her ability to tank range and she can still do it. Even in her season, she's actually pretty okay, pretty good to be honest, but unfortunately, just like Dimitri, she's pretty much the enemy phase version of Dimitri, where Dimitri can run enemy phase builds and player phase builds, where Fjorm is strictly enemy phase and hoping she wins her matchups. Not too great of a role to be in, and therefore pretty decisively last compared to every other legendary. So yeah, moving on. I know this one has a bit of contention to it, that's fine. Let me know in the comments what you think. I will read them, just keep it civil. Alright, next up here is your thoughts, guys, on this banner with Caeda, and of course, whether you'll be pulling. So no surprise to me, most people are skipping, and I feel this likely has something to do with Hero Rises. Not a surprise, I don't think. But it seems like a lot of you are taking advantage of your Fed Pass at the very little, and that likely lines up with everyone's goals and maybe collecting merges and stuff like Regan or Corrin or Leaf or Faye, who knows. Either way, that definitely seems like the case here, as we will likely see a spark percentage every single time I ask for these votes to happen. So let's talk about some comments that I saw. Jaws here says, I'm surprised she has 38 attack. That will definitely help with a Vantage playstyle. But just like Legendary Faye, she's a great Legendary in the wrong season. And scoring isn't so dire that you need to get her when even remix Legendaries do fine in today's game. This is actually a solid point because there really isn't any armored or calves in her season besides Leaf. So I guess she will have advantage over Leaf. But the thing with Leaf is he can actually run Hardy Bearing in the Seal and still score optimally. And if he does run that, then unfortunately Caeda does not even have an advantage against him. In terms of matchups, she doesn't have good matchups in her season, but she's actually pretty great against every other season, and of course all the different modes. So yeah, it's a fair comparison to Faye, to be honest. But you don't really need it for scoring. You can definitely get up to tier 21 without needing her by any means. MK here says, I'm very likely to go colorless to snipe Legendary Corrin. She's currently +8, only use one copy, and then I can spark the last. I really like Caeda, so I want her to be main water Legendary, but sadly her color share here is undesirable for me. And to be fair, it's likely true. Distance Stance is great fodder off of Faye, to be fair, even if you don't use it, because it's still unique to her, and Note is the best defense mythic. But realistically, if you don't need the fodder or have no immediate use for it, then just strictly sniping one color wouldn't be desirable just for one unit. And Corrin here makes sense as the thing to target. This is why I think the poll has such a higher percent and yes for Spark, because everyone should still be working on their goals or is likely skipping and saving orbs for something like Hero Rises. Finally, a comment by Skinnybone says, I'm planning to go until Spark so I can finish off Legendary Corrin. While there are some other units on the banner that I might be interested in, they don't have desirable color shares for me. I need to save orbs for Hero Rises, Legendary Zora Remix, and the Note Revival anyway. Which is a great point, actually. The Note Revival is coming up where she's on a permanent banner and can be sparked for you guys that don't have Fed Pass. I should have mentioned this earlier in the video, so I'm glad that this comment was picked by me to to bring it to your attention now. If you are considering Note and just a one-off, then her permanent banner coming up might be the better place, especially if you're a non-Fed Pass user. As a Fed Pass user, maybe this Legendary banner is better, but if you're not planning to spark, then the permanent banner will have better rates to pick up Note anyways. So yeah, guys, this analysis was definitely longer than or should you pull video was longer than some of the other ones I've made, but I feel that I wanted to, again, put in my effort and due diligence on this character and what I feel her standing is. So hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you made it this far into the video, I really appreciate it. As always, smash that like button and sub if you haven't already. I put in as much effort as I can for you guys to get as much out of this as you can. Feel free, again, to maybe check me out on Twitch as we do some gameplay there and commentary. Patreon is a great way to support the channel, and if nothing else, there is a YouTube join button as well. Love you all, and see you in the next one. Peace.
It's over.